Adolf Otto Eichmann, a name that still chills the spine of history. To understand him, we must go back, not to the courtrooms of Jerusalem where he sat in a glass booth, but to the quiet, unassuming beginning of a boy born into an ordinary world who would one day help orchestrate one of history's darkest crimes. He was born on March 19th, 1906, in Solingen, Germany, a small industrial town known for its steel blades and craftsmanship. His father, Adolf Karl Eichmann, was a middle-class businessman running an electrical engineering company. His mother, Maria, was described as caring and soft-spoken. When young Adolf was just 10 years old, tragedy struck. The death of his mother left a void in his life. Soon after, his father remarried, and the family relocated to Linz, Austria, a city that would later play a pivotal role in shaping his ideological future. Linz was not just any city. It was the childhood home of another boy whose name would become infamous, Adolf Hitler. Though Eichmann and Hitler never crossed paths in those early years, the city's atmosphere was thick with rising German nationalism and anti-Semitism. As a student, Eichmann was unremarkable. He was neither brilliant nor particularly motivated. His classmates called him Der kleine Jude, the little Jew, mocking his dark features. Whether these insults planted the seeds of resentment or not, no one can say for certain, but they may have left scars. By his late teens, Eichmann had abandoned formal education. He worked a series of odd jobs, an apprentice mechanic, a salesman for vacuum oil, and a brief stint at his father's company. Yet, he felt like a man drifting without purpose. Then came the 1930s, a time of chaos, economic collapse, and political extremism sweeping across Europe. In 1932, on the advice of a family friend, Eichmann joined the Austrian branch of the Nazi Party and soon after enlisted in its paramilitary wing, the SS Schutzstaffel. At that time, the SS was not yet the monstrous machine of death it would later become. It was a brotherhood of radical nationalist men pledging loyalty to Hitler. Eichmann found in it what he had lacked all his life: belonging, purpose, and a uniform that gave him identity. His early SS career was far from glamorous. He began in administrative roles, filing papers, attending meetings, learning the bureaucratic discipline that would later define him. But in 1934, fate intervened. He was assigned to the SD, Sicherheitsdienst, the intelligence service of the SS, under the command of Reinhard Heydrich, a man often called the Blonde Beast for his ruthlessness. Heydrich recognized something in Eichmann, not brilliance, but efficiency. Eichmann was not a soldier or a charismatic leader. He was something arguably more dangerous, a man who followed orders with relentless dedication without questioning their morality. In 1935, he was given a special assignment that would shape his destiny, the Jewish desk within the SD. His task was to study the Jewish question and find ways to pressure Jews to leave Germany. Eichmann took to the work obsessively. He learned Hebrew phrases, studied Jewish customs, and even visited Palestine under the guise of a journalist to understand the Zionist movement. By 1938, when Germany annexed Austria in the Anschluss, Eichmann returned to Linz, not as the aimless youth who had left years before, but as a rising SS officer. He organized the forced emigration of Austrian Jews, setting up the central office for Jewish emigration in Vienna. His methods were brutal, yet bureaucratically efficient. Terrorize Jewish communities, strip them of property, then process their exit as quickly as possible. For this success, he earned praise from his superiors and was promoted. Then came World War II. When Hitler invaded Poland in 1939, the persecution of Jews escalated into something far more sinister. Ghettos were established, mass shootings began, and within the Nazi hierarchy, a chilling idea took root: the final solution, the plan to annihilate the Jews of Europe. In January 1942, at a villa on the shores of Berlin's Wannsee Lake, senior Nazi officials gathered for a meeting. The Wannsee Conference would formalize genocide. Adolf Eichmann was there, not as a decision maker, but as the man tasked with turning ideology into logistics. He recorded the minutes, coordinated departments, and ensured that trains would run, not carrying passengers, but human cargo destined for death camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. Eichmann's role was pivotal. He didn't shoot victims, but he made sure they arrived at their graves on time. He organized deportations with chilling precision, often bragging about sending 100 trains a day. Survivors would later recall how he appeared calm, polite, even smiling, an ordinary man performing extraordinary evil. By 1944, as the war turned against Germany, Eichmann remained unwavering. In Hungary, he personally oversaw the deportation of over 400,000 Jews to Auschwitz in just a few months, a logistical massacre. When asked later why he did it, his answer was hauntingly simple: "I obeyed orders." But the Reich was crumbling, Allied forces closed in, and Adolf Eichmann, the man who had helped engineer genocide, prepared to disappear. The year was 1945. The Third Reich was collapsing under the weight of relentless Allied attacks. Berlin lay in ruins, and the dream of a 1,000-year Reich was disintegrating in less than 12. For men like Adolf Eichmann, key architects of Nazi crimes, the war's end meant only one thing: run, hide, survive. Eichmann burned documents, shed his SS uniform, and vanished into the chaos. He was last seen in Berlin in the spring of 1945, fleeing westward. For months, he wandered through the shattered remains of Germany, avoiding capture by Allied troops. Eventually, he found refuge in a remote farm in northern Germany, working as a lumberjack under the false name Otto Henninger. The Allies hunted prominent Nazis, but Eichmann initially escaped notice. While the world focused on big names like Goering, Himmler, and Goebbels, the quiet bureaucrat of mass murder slipped through the cracks. Even during the Nuremberg trials, where other Nazi leaders faced justice, Eichmann's absence loomed like a shadow. By 1948, sensing the tightening net, Eichmann sought a more permanent escape. With the help of former SS comrades and a secret network known as Odessa, Organisation der ehemaligen SS-Angehörigen, he obtained forged documents from the Red Cross under the name Ricardo Clement. In 1950, he boarded a ship from Genoa bound for a faraway land where he believed no one would find him: Argentina. Argentina, under President Juan Perón, was a haven for fugitives of the defeated Axis powers. Nazis arrived in droves, bringing with them stolen wealth, expertise, and dark secrets. Eichmann settled quietly in a suburb of Buenos Aires, living a modest life as a factory worker. To neighbors, Ricardo Clement was just another immigrant trying to make ends meet. He reunited with his wife Vera and their 3 sons, who joined him in Argentina. For nearly a decade, he lived in obscurity. But history has a way of refusing to let monsters hide forever. In 1957, a German Jewish immigrant living in Argentina, Lothar Hermann, heard rumors from his teenage daughter that a man claiming to have been a Nazi official bragged about his role in the war. Hermann, who had survived the Dachau concentration camp, alerted authorities in West Germany. His message eventually reached a small but relentless group, Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency. For Israel, still a young nation formed in the aftermath of the Holocaust, bringing Eichmann to justice was not just a mission, it was a moral imperative. Survivors of the camps walked its streets. The ghosts of 6 million demanded accountability. In 1960, Mossad launched Operation Finale, a daring plan to capture Eichmann alive and smuggle him to Israel for trial. Agents surveilled Ricardo Clement for weeks, confirming his true identity. On May 11, 1960, as Eichmann walked home from work along a lonely dirt road, Mossad agents pounced. There was a brief struggle, but the 54-year-old bureaucrat offered no real resistance. He was taken to a safe house, interrogated, and eventually drugged to appear drunk on a commercial flight to Israel. The news of Eichmann's capture shook the world. Argentina protested the violation of its sovereignty. Israel stood firm. On April 11, 1961, Adolf Eichmann sat in a bulletproof glass booth in a Jerusalem courtroom facing charges of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes against the Jewish people. The trial was a watershed moment in history. For the first time, the Holocaust was laid bare in meticulous detail before a global audience. Survivors testified, their voices trembling but resolute, recounting horrors beyond imagination. Millions watched on television as this thin, balding man, who had once sent millions to their deaths, listened with an expressionless face. Eichmann's defense was chilling in its banality. He did not deny the killings, but insisted he was merely a small cog following orders. "I am guilty of obedience," he said, portraying himself as a loyal functionary rather than a monster. But the prosecution, led by Gideon Hausner, dismantled this facade, showing that Eichmann had not only followed orders, he had often exceeded them, pushing for more efficient deportations and pressing on even when others hesitated. The trial forced the world to confront a terrifying truth. Evil can wear an ordinary face. Philosopher Hannah Arendt, covering the trial for The New Yorker, coined the phrase, "the banality of evil," to describe Eichmann, a man who killed not with rage, but with paperwork and punctual trains. On December 15, 1961, Eichmann was found guilty on all counts. His final words, before being led to the gallows in the early hours of June 1, 1962, were defiant yet empty. "I am a German officer, and in the face of my enemies, I will not humiliate myself." The trapdoor opened. Eichmann was hanged, his body cremated, and his ashes scattered in the Mediterranean Sea, so that no land would ever hold him. But his legacy, it endures. Not as a legacy of greatness, but as a warning. Adolf Eichmann was not a raving lunatic or a sadistic killer in the conventional sense. He was a clerk, a bureaucrat, a man who organized death as if it were freight. His story reminds us that history's greatest atrocities are not always committed by fanatics alone, but often by ordinary people who surrender their conscience to authority. The final word belongs not to him, but to one of the Holocaust survivors who testified at his trial. When asked why he came to face Eichmann, he said, "Because the world must know what happens when good people do nothing."